I want us to take a look at variables in Python in this particular video. Okay, we're going to take a look at what it is and how to also assign them. So to create a new file, let's just go ahead and right click in here. And I'm going to go to new and then say Python file right there. And we're going to just call these variables. Okay, let's call that variables. And we don't have to add .py right there. So let's just press enter and it's going to open up this page. Okay, so let me just drag this a little bit to the left, and then within this particular, we're going to start off right here, then start typing the code right here. However, but before we write any line of code right now, we need to take a look at what variables are. Okay. So basically, variables in Python are actually used to store values, and not just basically in Python, but in every programming language, we would normally use variables to store values. Okay, so these values can actually be of different types. Okay, they can be in something like numbers, they can be in strings, they can be in lists, and even in dictionaries. Okay, so we'll have quite a lot of other ones which we could actually get into as we move along. But however, I want you to also know that in Python, that variables are dynamically typed. Okay, so what this means is that you don't need to like declare the type of a variable explicitly. Okay, so Python it kind of infers it based on the value that is assigned to it. Okay, so basically I'm going to actually show you how to really work with variables. So right here we can start off with creating our first variable. So I can do something like x, and then I can actually set it with an assignment operator. So let's say I'm going to set this to something like 10. Okay, but then what I'm going to do first of all right now is that there are some rules that actually guide the creation of variables in Python. Okay, so what I want to do right now is I want to like paste that at the top right here. Okay, so I'm going to just basically create something like comment right here. So let's put multi-line comment right here, and we can just copy and paste the rules right here. Okay, so let me do that right now. All right, so I have that copied and pasted right here. So if you take a look in here, this is variable name rules. Okay, the first thing that we have in here is that variable names can actually contain letters, that is, it can be in lowercase letters or in uppercase letters, A to Z, and it can also contain digits, that's 0 to 9, and it can also contain underscores. Okay, then the rule number 2 right here says that variable names cannot start with a digit. So you cannot start a variable name with a digit. For instance, this is a variable. We cannot just start this with something like 9x like this. Okay, if you do this, this is going to cause an issue. Okay, you don't start it with that. Okay, however, you can actually put that 9 that you have in there, maybe just after the 9, the x, you can put it at a place like this. Okay, instead of where we added it earlier. Okay, so that's just what that line is actually talking about. So you cannot actually start a variable name with a digit. Now down here we have another one that says variable names are case sensitive, and I have given an example right here. If you have a variable that is actually called my car, it's basically different from my car written this way that this one is right now because of the case sensitivity. The C right here is in uppercase letter, and they will see in the same my car is in lowercase letter. So these are seen as two different things. Okay, so we cannot call this the same thing. Then the next rule right here is that Python keywords cannot be used as variable, and that's where if you use something like del like this, you cannot use this as a variable. Okay, this is a keyword from that of the Python. Okay, same thing applies to every other keyword that I actually find in Python development. You cannot use them as variable names. Okay, so that's just what that is right now on that particular line. All right, so the next thing I want to point out right now is, for instance, if we want to, I'm going to just do number 2 right here, and I'm going to just basically say assigning values to variables. Okay, so just like we did down here, if I want to give a definition to this right now, I'm going to just basically say that you can actually assign values to variable using the assignment operator, and the assignment operator that we have is actually an equality sign like this. Okay, this particular sign that we have in here. So that is what we have actually done down here. So we created a variable in here, and then we use the assignment operator to assign it. Okay, so this particular variable right here called x contain a value of 10. Okay, and if you want to test that, if you do something like print, and let's just say we'll pass in x within this particular place right now, if we save this and then we'll try to run this particular project, I'm going to just right click in here and then run variables. Okay, so if you look down here, you see that we have 10 right here, okay, as the value of that x which I have just printed on the screen. All right, so remember that this was just basically this is just a value. This is actually an integer, okay, that is assigned to this particular thing in here. We can also do something like if we want to use strings, we can also do that. Okay, for instance, if I get down here and then do something like name. Let's make sure we type name correctly as a variable name, and we can set that to be equal to maybe my name, or we can just basically call this Cookinder like that. That is our be just like a name. And what we can do down here, if we get down here, if we want to print that out, it's really possible. We can just do, let's do print down here, and we're just basically going to pass in the name variable right here. So if we save this and then we'll try to run the code again, and we're going to see, let's click on run right here. And you notice that we have Cookinder right there, okay, which is actually coming from these particular lines that we have in here. Okay, so that's just what I also want to let you know on that particular line. All right, so this is just like, this is a string, okay, this is a string. The first one was actually an integer, and we'll have a string right here. All right, so the other thing that I want us to do right now is basically going to be the variable types. Okay, so down here, let's put that down here. Okay, let's say that the third thing that we want to do right now is going to be about that of the variable types. So I'm going to just do variable types. And all right, so guys, these are the types of variable types that we basically have. Okay, so remember that with variable types, Python kind of automatically infers the type of every variable based on the values assigned to them. Okay, and we have basically listed out some variable types that we have, like as you can actually see right here. Okay, the first one is actually called the integers. This particular integers, it simply means whole numbers without any decimal points. Okay, so this is actually points. Okay, so any whole number that does not have any decimal points on it is actually called an integer, and we have actually given an example of that when we created this particular line that we're having here. Okay, as you can see, this line does not have any decimal points right here, just 10. It's a whole number, so that's just the first one right there. So the next one is actually called a float, and this is actually numbers with decimal points. Okay, had it been that we have something like 10.6 right here, so this particular line, this x now contains, it now becomes a float. Okay, so because it contains a decimal number. Okay, that's 0.0 right there. So that's what actually going to convert that to a decimal number. Then after that, we have string right here, which is a textual data enclosed within quotes, and we have actually given an example of that down here when we brought this out, Cookinder right there. Okay, so any text that has quotes around it right like this actually becomes a string. Okay, so the next one is actually called a boolean. Okay, that's bool right there, and it simply represents either true or false. And before now, you basically must have known that a boolean value contains two values, that's true and also false. Okay, that's just the two things that it's basically a kind of a contains. All right, so if you want to prove what I just talked about right now, it's really very simple. Let's say, for instance, if let's find out if this is actually an integer or not. Okay, because the way that it is right, I just prints out the value. If I do type right here, that is a function that is actually called a type, and let's make sure that we'll wrap that type around this particular variable right here. Okay, so remember what I just added. So type, if you do type, you're going to just make sure you wrap that particular type function around your variable called x right here, and save your changes. So let's run this. And if you take a look at our result right here, you now see that we have a class set to int, meaning that this particular value right here is actually an integer. And if we change this right now to something like 6.6, I mean a 10.6 right there, and then we'll save the changes. And if we run this again, you're going to see that it changes to float right there. Okay, so it is now float. So that's just basically how you can actually test it. If you want to test the rest, you can actually do that. You can also do the same thing to that on this particular line to find out whether this is a string or not. All right, so the next thing I want to do right now is it's actually going to be what we call variable reassignment, and I'm going to do that within this particular place right now. Okay, so I'm going to just say number 4 right here, and you can just say this variable reassignment. So to work with the variable reassignment, you can actually change the value of a variable, assigning it to maybe a new value or something of that nature. Okay, and we're going to just experiment with that right now. I think we already have some certain things in here. So we have our x to be set to this particular value right here, and we can actually change that. Let me just go ahead and change this to 10, and I think I do not actually even need this anymore, but however, let me just comment this particular line out. So I'm going to just put hash right there, and we can just do I also want to comment this particular one out. Let me just comment this out, and also comment this particular one out, so that we're just focusing on this right now. Okay, and I'm going to just leave the code in there for you in case you're actually going to need it. So for instance, if we know that the value of this result that we have in here, this particular x right here, is actually 10. Okay, because if we just do something like print, just like you have seen before, and we'll pass in x right here, and if we run it, we're going to just basically see 10 right there. Okay, but we can actually reassign that. Let's say, for instance, if we get down here and we'll go ahead and then do x again, and now we're not setting the value of x to something like 30. Okay, so if we basically, I'm going to just cut this particular line right here. I'm going to just cut it and then put it down here. Okay, and if I save the changes right now, watch what is actually going to happen. Of course, we have the first one to be set to 10, and now we have the second one that is actually set to 30 right here. So if I run this code right here, you see that the value is now actually 30. And that's just basically what it means when they talk about variable reassignment. So we just reassigned the value of x. Okay, we changed it from 10 to that of the 30 on this particular line. Okay, that's just basically what we have just done, and that's what it means to reassign variables. Okay, so if we go and do another line, maybe I copy this and reassign the value to something like 45. If I print the result, it's going to actually print the one that is actually the last one. Okay, that's reassignment for you guys. All right, so the next thing I want us to take a look at what we call multiple assignments, and I'm going to just, if I go to the top in here, I want to just say number 5 right here, and I'm going to just say something like multiple assignments, like that. Okay, and once we talk about multiple assignment, it means that you can actually assign multiple values to in a single line. Okay, you can assign multiple values to multiple variables in a single line, and it's really very simple. So what we're going to do right now is I want to comment out some of these lines again. So I'm going to stick comment this line out and also comment this particular one that we're having here out right now. And let's also try, maybe we're going to basically use this anyway, but let's try to change the variable this time around. So I'm going to use something like ABC to create my new variables right here. So I'm going to create a variable that I'm going to call A, and I'm going to introduce a comma right here, and then do B, introduce a comma, and also do C right there. And we're going to actually use our assignment operator, which is equal to, and you can assign values to them. So we can say that the first one is actually 10. I'm going to add a comma, and the second one is actually going to be 20, add a comma in there, and then the last one is actually going to be 30, like that. Okay, so it means that this particular option right here, this particular variable A has a value of 10 and B has a value of 20, and the same thing applies to that of the C right there. Okay, so if you want to print the results out, we can actually do that. So I think that if we just do print and within here we do something like A, and then we'll save the changes, and let's give it a shot. And if you take a look in here, you see that we'll have 10 right there. Okay, so let's change that to something like C, and let's see whether we're going to actually have 30 printed. So I'm going to just run this again, and you see that we have 30 printed on the screen for us. All right, so and I know that a good number of you may also be asking if it's possible to print out all of these results, okay, at the same time on this place, and the answer to that is yes. So I'm going to copy these variables right here and then put them in this place. So this is A, and this is B, and this is C. Okay, so if we save the changes right now and then save, it's going to actually print out all of these results in order. I'm going to just save it and then click on run, and you see that we'll have 10 and we'll have 20 and then we'll have 30. Okay, so what I'm not quite sure is if we switch them, I don't know whether it's actually going to work. So I'm going to just take this away and try to put that maybe at the end right here. So this is going to be a comma here, and then paste that, and I'm going to take away the last comma in there. So this means that we're going to just basically have 10, 30 before 20, I believe. So let's save the changes, and then if we run, and it seems like that basically works. Okay, so this is 10, and then we'll have 30, and finally we'll have 20 right here, which is in the position of that of the B. So it works just fine, guys. All right, so the next thing I want us to take a look at now is what we call variable swapping. Okay, so I'm going to just do number 6 right here, which is the next point that we want to work on, and I'm going to just do this. I'm going to just say swapping variables, and we're going to just like try to do that down there. So what I mean by this variable swapping right here is that Python allows the swapping the values of variables in a single line without needing something like a temporary variable. Okay, so Python actually allows people to really do that, and we're going to actually practice that maybe down here. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is that let me put this, sorry about that, I'm going to just comment this out and also comment this particular line out right here. So let's make sure comment that out, and then at the top right here, for us to work on the swapping variable right here, I'm going to create a new variable which I'm going to call A, and I want to go ahead and set that to 10 right there. And then on the next line, we're going to create another variable that we're going to call B, and let's go ahead and set that to a value of 20. Okay, so now down here we want to start working on the swapping. So to swap the value of A to that of the B, we can just do A. Maybe I should just basically put a comment in here and just say something like let's do swapping the values of A and B. Okay, so to do that down here, It's actually going to be very simple. So let's just try to do that right here. And the way that is actually done is that if we just type A right here, we can put a comma and then do that of the B. Okay. However, if we want to do the swapping right now, we can just set an equality sign right here. If we say A comma B is now equal to B comma that of the A. Okay. So with this line, we've actually swapped the two values. Okay. If you want to print the result out, you can actually do that. And let's just try to give that a shot by trying to print the result down here. And the first one, I'm going to just say print. And what I'm going to do right now, I just want to, if I do A right here, let me just put that in quotes. This is going to be A. And originally the value of A should be something like 10 right here, right? So I'm going to just do this way. I'm going to just put a comma in here and then put A on this particular place. Okay. And let's see whether the value is actually going to be something like 20. So I want to put output is actually going to be something like 20 right here. Okay, that's just what I'm getting at if the swapping really works. But if it did not work, that means we're going to have something like 10. Okay, but I believe it's going to actually work. So I want to copy this line and then paste it on the next line. And this one is the value of that of the B. So we've already done the swapping. So what I want to do, I'm going to just do B right here. And then I'm going to change this from what it is right now to B. And basically, I'm expecting the result to be 10. Okay, so let's save the changes. And I'm going to click on run. And then if we take a look at the result right here, you see that the value of that of the A now becomes 20, which means that the swapping really worked. And that of the B now becomes 10. So the swapping really works. So that is just that, guys. All right, so let's move on to the next one. And I'm going to just do 7 right here. And we're going to just say something like constants. Okay, and we're going to just work on constants. And I want you to take note of this. Basically, Python doesn't actually have a built-in constant types, but programmers often use something like uppercase variable names to actually denote constants. So indicating that such values shouldn't actually be changed. Okay, and I'm going to experiment with that. I'm going to just give you an example down there. So let's try to comment this out. Also comment this particular line out. And we should also comment. Let's just basically comment all of these lines out, guys. And also this particular one right here, which is basically could be the last one in there. And what I want to do within this particular place right now is to go ahead and then, just like I said, that Python doesn't actually have a built-in constant, but we can actually mimic or we can create our own constant. If I do something like py like this, okay, this is a variable name. I can go ahead and assign it to, let's say this is going to be 3.1415, just write about any value in there. Okay, so if I do this right now, I'm using capital letter right here. It means that I'm basically dedicating this to be a constant. Okay, and that this particular value shouldn't actually be changed across the program. Okay, and there's nothing really special about it. I'm the one actually doing this. You can use a different variable if you want, but let's say that this is actually going to be the center of a circle and you want to use something like pi like that to designate it. And most of the time, programmers will actually use something like capital letters or uppercase letters to designate that. Okay. And it's really very important that you do it that way, because if other persons are actually going to be reading your program, it will help them a kind of understand it, since it sounds like a form of a convention. Okay, so if you want to print it, we just use the same approach. We just do print and you can just do pi right, like that. If you save that, the print, you notice that we'll have just basically the value that was actually assigned to it. Okay, let's say we're going to do that of the gravity. If you just do gravity like this, and we can just go ahead and set that to, let's say that the gravity is actually going to be 9 point something like let's say 8 right there. Okay, if you want to print that out, you can also do that. So I'm going to copy this, and then on the next line I'm going to just change this to gravity. So this is going to be gravity like that. Let's save the changes, and if we hit on run, you see that we also have that right there. Okay, and I know that if you want to append, like let's say later, let's call this something like gravity like that, you can just do things of this nature. Okay, so you can just introduce a command here, save the changes, and if you run, this will have gravity right there. Okay, and then we'll have the value. If you want to do that for pi, you can also do that right here. Okay, so I'm going to just do this like this, introduce a comma, and within here I'm going to just say pi like that. Let's create a space, save that, and run it. You see that we have those things and they are nicely labeled out, guys. So I think that just it. All right, so that is just it about being able to work on that of a constant. Okay, So the next thing I want us to take a look at right now is actually going to be that of the deleting variables. Okay, so I'm going to just do number 8 down here. So this is going to be 8, and I'm going to just say something like deleting variables. Okay, and what I mean by this deleting variable is that you can actually delete variable using something like a del keyword in that of the Python, and I'm going to actually show you as we move along. Okay, so let's say I'm going to comment this out right now. So comment this one. All right, so we basically have all of these lines kind of commented out, and right here I want to write want to like give an example or write a sample code for that of the deleting variable. And let's just create a variable that I'm going to just call x, and we're going to set that to a value of, let's say this is going to be 14, and we'll have that right now. If we want to output this, we can just basically do print, and we can go ahead and pass in our x variable right here. If we save and run and check our console, we're going to have 14 right there. All right, but however, if we want to pass in, we want to use a key, what is it called? We want to use a keyword that is actually called a del to delete the value of this thing. We can actually do it, and it's really very simple. I'm going to just do del down here, and as you can see, it's actually a keyword. Okay, so if I do del, and I can actually go ahead and then bring in the variable that I actually want to delete, which is this x up here. Okay, so if I do that right now, and the next thing I want to do is basically this has to just like be down here. If we put this just right after the del keyword, and then we'll try to print the results for ourselves, we're going to see that it's going to actually raise a name error telling us that this particular variable doesn't actually exist. Okay, so let's see the changes, and then we'll try to run this, and you see that we have name error and that x is not actually defined. Okay, so this is the full breakdown of the error line right there. Okay, so it tells you that that is not actually defined, and that is because we've deleted it from this particular place. That's why it's telling us that it's really not defined. So you can use del keyword to delete the value of a variable or even a variable itself. Okay, so that's just what that is. If you take this away, let's say for instance, if I comment this, I comment this out right now. Let's make sure we'll do this way, and then we'll run the code again. You see that the value kind of comes back. Okay, so that's just what that is, and that is just it, guys. So, and then in conclusion right now, variables are actually fundamental building blocks in Python, and they are actually extensively used in writing programs. So understanding how to work with variables in assignments is actually crucial for any Python programmer. So I want you to like practice assigning values to variables, reassigning them, and performing operations with them to reinforce your understanding. So thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, just give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.